In the heart of Victorian London, at the center of a global empire, stood an institution thought to be impregnable, the Bank of England. But in 1873, four audacious Americans would come dangerously close to bringing it to its knees, pulling off one of the most daring and ingenious frauds in history. This is the story of the Bidwell brothers and their £1,000,000 swindle. Our story begins, not in London, but across the Atlantic, with two brothers from a respectable New England family, Austin and George Bidwell. Austin was the mastermind, a brilliant forger and a smooth-talking charmer. His younger brother George was the cautious planner, the detail-oriented strategist. They had a history of small-time cons in America, but their ambition was anything but small. They dreamt of a score so big it would set them up for life. And where better to find that score than London, the financial capital of the world? They were joined by two other key players, George MacDonnell, a Harvard-educated American who could blend seamlessly into high society, and a cunning forger named Edwin Noyes. Together, they formed a formidable team. Their target, the fortress-like Bank of England, a symbol of British financial might. A direct robbery was impossible, so they devised a plan that relied on deception, not force. The plan was brilliant in its simplicity. MacDonnell, using the alias Frederick Albert Warren, would open a legitimate account at the Bank of England. His goal was to establish himself as a wealthy, reliable, and slightly eccentric American businessman. He rented a lavish office, dressed impeccably, and began depositing real money into his account. He made a point of being friendly with the bank clerks, building trust and familiarity. Warren was the perfect Trojan horse. While MacDonnell cultivated his persona, Austin Bidwell and Edwin Noyes were busy in a secret workshop. Their task was to forge bills of exchange. These were essentially post-dated checks, a common financial instrument of the time. A merchant would promise to pay a certain amount on a future date, and this promise, the bill, could be traded. The bank would discount these bills, paying out the cash immediately for a small fee, confident they would be honored on their due date. The forger's work was masterful. They perfectly replicated the letterheads, signatures, and wax seals of legitimate, reputable companies. The genius of the scam was that they weren't creating fake money. They were creating fake promises from real companies. For months, MacDonnell, as Mr. Warren, presented these forged bills to the Bank of England. At first, they were for small amounts and had short maturity dates. Crucially, before each bill came due, the gang would deposit enough real money into Warren's account to cover it. To the bank, everything looked perfect. Mr. Warren was a fantastic client. He brought in a steady stream of high-quality bills, and he always paid on time. The bank's confidence in him grew, and soon they were discounting his bills without a second thought. The amounts grew larger and larger, thousands of pounds, then tens of thousands. The gang was living a life of luxury, flaunting their newfound wealth across London and Paris. They were draining the Bank of England, and no one suspected a thing. They had siphoned off over £100,000, a colossal sum worth well over £10 million today. They planned one final massive haul before disappearing forever. They flooded the bank with a huge batch of forged bills, cashing them out and converting the sterling into gold and American bonds. The total was staggering. Their plan was to flee to America, where extradition treaties were weak, and live out their days as millionaires. It was the perfect crime, almost. The downfall came from a single, overlooked mistake. On one of the final forged bills, Austin Bidwell forgot to write the date. It was a tiny error, a moment of carelessness in a plan that had been executed with military precision. When the bill was presented, the bank clerk noticed the missing date. It was a minor irregularity, but enough to raise a question. The clerk sent a query to the supposed issuer of the bill. The reply came back. They knew nothing about it. The alarm was raised. The bank, in a state of panic and disbelief, quickly checked the other bills for Mr. Warren. They were all forgeries. The greatest fraud in its history had been exposed by a simple slip of the pen. A telegram was immediately dispatched to every police force in the country and across the world. Arrest the Bidwell gang. The news sent the conspirators scattering. George Bidwell had already fled to Cuba, believing he was safe. Austin was caught in Havana after a dramatic chase. MacDonnell was apprehended in New York, and Hill was eventually tracked down in America as well. The global reach of British law and the new technology of the telegraph had closed the net around them. The trial at the Old Bailey in London was a sensation. The public was captivated by these gentlemen thieves who had so cleverly outsmarted the mighty Bank of England. Despite a spirited defense, the evidence was overwhelming. All four were found guilty and sentenced to penal servitude for life. The judge called their crime a fraud of a magnitude and audacity that has no parallel in the annals of crime. They served their sentences in brutal English prisons. Austin's health failed, and he was eventually pardoned, dying shortly after his release. George MacDonnell also received a pardon due to poor health. After nearly 20 years of hard labor, George Bidwell was also released. He returned to America, a changed man, and wrote a memoir about his exploits, titled Forging His Chains. The Bidwell fraud was a wake-up call for the entire banking industry. It forced institutions like the Bank of England to dramatically overhaul their security procedures and methods for verifying financial documents. The story of the Bidwell brothers remains a legendary tale of ambition, ingenuity, and ultimate failure, reminder that even the most perfect plans can be undone by the smallest of human errors. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this dive into history, be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories from the past. See you next time.